that's a bit of an eye-opener. What I said about trying something a bit different, and actually having a go with this particular fertilizer, which I use like that's for outside use basically. Gets a very low strength on my bonsai, and then about half the strength it says around the garden tubs. You know, there's a few things in tubs out in the garden. So I thought I'd try that on the orchids because of its very high potassium content, and we'll see what that does. I won't be using it every time, but I thought I'd give it a go. So I thought, I don't know how strong it is, I'll put the tiniest amount in and wait for it to dissolve, because it's a sort of lumpy, powdery sort of substance. Some hard lumps in there as well. I'm not even sure that stuff's really worth using, because it's been around a long time. It might have lost, you know, it might have actually changed its chemical makeup, but nonetheless I thought I'd give it a go. Tiniest amount went in there, and I stuck the old TDS meter in there, and it shot up to 350, and I'd only put the tiniest bit in there. I mean, that's probably what have we got, 2.5, 5, it's probably about 6 litres in there, and I've had to add some more water to water it down because that was just far too strong. So I've now got probably far more water than I need for today, but a little bit of wastage with the RO water I don't mind too much. Now that's gone down to just on 200 now, which is a little stronger than I would have used, but I don't want to waste too much water, and as orchids go, that's not ridiculously strong anyway. So we're going to give that a go. When you change a fertilizer or do something different, don't hold your breath to immediately see results, because it don't work like that. Orchids are not the fastest of growers, and they can take time to respond to change. And this time of year the watering frequency is relatively low, so the changes probably won't even show that much yet. But on a more regular basis, I think what I might do is actually, today I've got my pots to water, so I'll just get on with that with the water I've got. But the concept of having a high potassium feed was mainly for the Phalaenopsis. Well, I've only got a couple, and I'm not mixing up special feed for such few plants. So even though 4 of those are mounted, and my mounts aren't due to be watered today, I'll take advantage of the fact that I've actually got this feed mixed up today and do those as well. But if I'm going to use this in the future, it really does need the tiniest amount. I remember once I measured this, I had a watering can full that I was about to go outside in the garden with, and I'd only put a, you know, like a, well, this is the measuring scoop, and I'd put a quarter of one of those in, and the reading was very high. It was 480 or something like that. But I did sort of stop and think about that. Yeah, that was also with tap water, and my tap water's way over 200. It's got TDS of about 240, so that was part of what I was reading. But nonetheless, this is pretty strong stuff. So when you're using garden type fertilizers, you know, and in the books it says, you know, use it quarter strength for orchids. That would be too strong in this particular case, unless it was high summer with lots of really actively growing vigorous orchids, where it perhaps would be okay. But I wouldn't risk it. I very rarely go over 200 parts per million with any type of feed at any time of year. But then I feed more frequently than a lot of people. You know, a lot of people do several waterings with just water and then feed once at a higher level. That doesn't sit right with me. I'd rather give lower level feeds most times and then make sure I do a good flush in between. So yeah, watch your garden fertilizer stuff. It's pretty strong. And I actually got my normal MSU feed out. Now I won't use it. I'd like to add a bit of CalMag in there as well, because there is no calcium in there. There's nothing on the box that mentions calcium, and it's RO water, which has none in it. But it's already at a parts per million higher than I want, and I don't want to use even more water mixing up something that I may not use. Hang on, yes I would, wouldn't I? Yes, I think what I'll do is I'll water this down a bit and then add some CalMag in as well, so that there is at least some calcium in there. That'll give it a bit of iron as well, which is always useful. And then what's left over I can use tomorrow on the mounts when they're due again, so it won't actually get wasted. Yeah, so I think we'll add a bit of CalMag in there. Now that is going to bump up the magnesium because there's already magnesium in there, but not by enough to get to worrying levels, shall we say. So yeah, we'll give that a go. And as I say, if I start introducing this on a more regular basis, now that I know I need even less to mix up a suitable parts per million, yeah, getting that extra potassium in there, maybe every third run, something like that, and we'll see what we can do. And when I can get out to the shops, when I get time, I can get to the garden centre and get some of this seaweed stuff and start adding that in as well. When Rick mentioned that, I was a trifle worried on the grounds that I thought, well, hang on, how much? How often? But Rick came straight back with a comment and said that he does it about every third watering, and he increases his parts per million by about 20 or 30 using the seaweed feed. So at least I've got an idea of how it's being used successfully and can sort of mimic that along the lines. But you have to bear in mind, anything that's going to happen with my normal pots at every third watering, you're looking at heading up towards a month before that's going to happen, because I'm just not watering very often this time of year. My pots are coming around about every 7th day this time of year because of the low temperatures. Sometimes 8 days, depends how much sunshine I get through that glass. You know, so if you multiply that by 3 separate waterings, bearing in mind I need a flush in there now and again, it's not going to happen very often. But come the summertime, it could make much more of a difference on the grounds the frequency will speed up. So we'll see how we go. Anyway, that's today's water done. Far too much, but any leftover can be used tomorrow. They do say in a lot of cases that fertiliser should always be mixed up and used fresh. I don't think that's going to degrade to any great extent over 24 hours. And quite honestly, it won't even be as much as that. It'll be about 20 hours because it's now quite, the time's getting on Sunday. And on a weekday, if I'm going to water, I water pretty early in the day. So, less than 24 hours. So I'll risk it. We'll see how we go. See you next time. And another shock horror. Not only is that fertiliser very strong, and that's not a strong solution. That'll be fine for my orchids. I took the TDS down to 180 parts per million of the fertiliser, and then took a CalMag to get it back up to 200. So there's not a lot of CalMag gone in there, really. But guess what the pH is? Now, all you that said a high number, you're way off. It's 5.6. So for the first time in I don't know how long, living memory, I'm going to have to use a pH up. Now, I always end up, once I've mixed up my feed using the MSU or the CalMag, I always end up with a higher pH than I want, and I have to lower it down. So just a minute. I thought I'd better do this because somebody's bound to ask. For pH down, I use citric acid. This just comes in crystals. Must be kept dry, or it won't. It'll start changing its properties basically if it gets damp. So it's in a sealed bag and it's granules. They're still loose. They haven't compacted or anything. And the amount I use is like about 1/4 teaspoon in half a litre of RO water, give it a good shake and everything, and I use that as a stock solution for pH down. This is quite strong stuff. You only need a small amount mixed with water. But the only time I've ever had to do a pH up was when I overcooked this in a volume of water I wasn't prepared to waste, and the pH ended up far too low. What happened was I mixed up a sort of double strength solution by accident, so I ended up with quite a large volume of water with a very low pH. And the easiest way to raise the pH is just that. You find it in, it's just bicarb of soda. You find it in the baking area in all supermarkets if you haven't already got some tucked away from last time you made a cake or something. But again, this is a powder. Let's see if I can get the lid off with one hand. Come on, let go. Right, It's a powder, and last time I had to use it was actually in the Vander bucket, which is why I didn't want to waste the water. All I did was wet my finger and dip it in there, so I had a dusting on my finger, and it raised the pH by about, it went up from too low back up to too high with just that small amount. So again, this affects the pH dramatically. So you only need the tiniest amount. Better to err on the side of caution and recheck your pH rather than overcook it. But for once, that fertiliser has dropped that pH way below what I'm prepared to use. Practically vinegar. So we'll use a bit of bicarb, let that stir in, check the pH again if I need a little bit more, and keep going until I get it back up to where I want, which on this particular watering, given that I swing my pH, but this is going into pots, and a lot of these pots are not in brand new media, so they would have an element of acidity in the pot, so I aim my pH a little higher. I very rarely take this type of watering down below 5.96, and I usually aim at about 6.3, 6.4. Sometimes I go in at sort of 6.6, knowing that that pH will drop down in the pot. But if you start low and you've got slightly acidic media, you know, sort of sphagnum moss that's been in there a year or so, and you start low, your pot's going to lower it quite a bit more. You could end up down towards danger zones, if you know what I mean. So you need to know what's going on in your pot, how old your media is, and the effect that organic media can have on pH. Organic media will naturally lower the pH in the pot, unless you've got Orchiata bark that's brand new, in which case it may even higher it, because the process for the Orchiata bark involves some calcium. So the new bark does actually leach some calcium out. So if you've got brand new Orchiata bark, in theory there shouldn't be any need to add calcium type supplements. But I don't think it leaches out a lot, quite honestly. But anyway, just to chat about stuff going on and the various ingredients, all dirt cheap. I mean, that was £2 something. That will still be around long after I'm gone at the rate I'm using it. And bearing in mind, I have to drop the pH in virtually every watering. So it's going down at a ridiculously low rate. And this stuff, a dusting on the end of my finger, you know, how long's that going to last? I think that costs, well, I've had it a long time, but probably cost about £1 when I bought it. So two very, very exceptionally cheap types. Don't take any notice of the hydrogen peroxide. I'm just using the container. It's got it on it. It's written on there, citric acid. Two very, very cheap ways of doing a pH down or a pH up. You can buy the proper stuff in sort of hydroponic shops or in water garden type places, aqua shops and places like this, but you'll pay an absolute fortune for it. And when you actually look at the ingredients in there, you sort of think, well, I could get those ingredients and do it myself. Well, why not then? So anyway, that's that. Slight sideline. I'm supposed to be actually watering, not playing about showing you what I'm doing. So let's get on. See you next time.